All right, let's get straight to it. Ignore that KOSP headline, the plus 0.46%. It's pure noise. The real signal, the one that sets the vector for the US Open, is a massive institutional rotation into NVIDIA's key PCB supplier. That's the story.
Okay, so here's the core conflict right out of the gate. The main Korean index, the KOSPI, it closed green, but look at the heat map. You see all that red? Those are the giants, Samsung, SK Hynix, getting sold off. This isn't just a mixed market. This is a targeted capital strike. Something is happening under the surface.
So this number, this plus 0.46%, it's an illusion. It's nothing more than a mathematical average that's hiding two very powerful and completely opposing flows of capital. We're going to break that apart right now.
Right, so our entire job here is to separate that true institutional signal from all the mechanical background noise. One of these moves is a strategic bet on the future. The other, it's just a short-term distortion. We have to know the difference.
And here they are, side by side. On the left, you've got the old economy. That's a short squeeze in shipbuilding. It's reactive, it's forced. But on the right, that's the real story. That's the high-tech AI rotation. This is active, deliberate accumulation by smart money. Two totally different stories creating one very misleading index number. Let's put some numbers on it. The noise was HD Hyundai, up over 11%. But that was a forced liquidation of short positions. A move like that, it burns itself out in a few sessions, max. The signal, that was Isu Petasys, up over 21%. This wasn't a squeeze. This was an active institutional rotation, a strategic reallocation of capital with the potential to run for weeks. Just focus on this number for a second, plus 21%. This is the signal activation. This isn't random noise. This is high conviction capital making a very specific and very loud statement. And here's the weight behind that statement. 150.9 billion Korean won. That's the net amount of foreign institutional money that piled into the single key supply chain node. So why Isu Petasys? Why all the focus here? Because it's a strategic tech partner for the biggest name in AI. This is the company making the high-layer printed circuit boards for NVIDIA's next-gen GB200 server build-out. The big money isn't just betting on AI software. They're betting on the physical iron, the literal infrastructure that makes it all possible. Now, here's where we build the bridge. Why does all this matter for the US session? Because this signal out of Korea is a potential leading indicator. It's translating what happened with Asian capital flows into a concrete setup for the US Open. And the precision of this move is just incredible. Look at this. Foreign funds liquidated nearly 600 billion won from the big electronic names. They sold the giants and rotated a huge chunk of that capital right into Isu Petasys. So what's the takeaway? This creates a conditional long signal for its US counterparts, names like TTM Technologies and Supermicro. But, and you have to get this, the condition is strict. These upstream alpha names absolutely must outperform the broad semiconductor index tonight. If they don't, the signal is unconfirmed and the thesis is dead in the water.
When you cut through all the noise, the data from the physical supply chain is pointing in one direction. It is unambiguously bullish.
But there's always a but, right? The macro environment, especially the inflation inputs, is screaming caution. And it's that conflict, that tension between the supply chain and the macro data that is going to decide how tonight's session plays out. So we have to address the threat matrix. There are a couple of major external risks that could completely override this entire AI bull case, no matter how strong that supply chain signal looks.
Threat number one is energy. Brent crude is literally pennies away from that $100 mark. That's a massive psychological and inflationary trigger. A close above that level and the whole inflation story comes roaring back, and that puts pressure on the entire market.
And threat number two, the US 10-year Treasury yield. If that yield breaks above 4.32%, the cost of money goes up. That directly hammers the valuations for growth stocks, the very sectors we are targeting. Either one of these threats can invalidate the entire bull thesis.
Okay, analysis is complete. We are now switching to execution protocol. This is your battle plan for the open. Remember the first rule. Do not trade the headline. You trade the supply chain. These are your levels. For NQ futures, the pivot is 26,500. Above, we can scale in. Below, you reduce exposure.
For TTMI and SMCI, confirmation only comes if they outperform the SOX index. If Brent closes above 100, that triggers an inflation override. You get long XLE, you reduce your QQQ. And for bonds, if that 10-year yield pushes past 4.32%, that confirms a short bias in TLT and pressures the entire growth case.
Here is your final checklist. 1. Watch pre-market volume on TTMI and SMCI. 2. Confirm their outperformance versus the SOX. 3. Invalidate the thesis if Brent closes above 100. 4. Invalidate if the 10-year yield breaches 4.32%. 5. Apply 1.5% trailing stops on all positions. 6. Log the result at 0730 Eastern Time. No exceptions.
If you want the intel from the Asia close before New York opens, you know what to do. Subscribe. Be here.